So the title of the talk today is this a spiritual awakening, or am I just experiencing depression? Yes, that's such an interesting question, right? But first of all, before we start, I just want to give a disclaimer that non-duality isn't therapy. What's happened in the West over the last, it seems like 50 years, is it's become more and more integrated with therapy. And non-duality in itself isn't therapy. It's a spiritual tradition that dates back thousands and thousands of years. And it's not about fixing the story or fixing the person. It's about going beyond the person and going beyond the story. However, in the course of it, often what has to happen is the ego or the separate person has to become stabilized. But that's not always the way, because life is full of contradictions and there's infinite possibilities. So you hear many stories where the ego becomes incredibly unstable and then there is awakening. But in a lot of cases, there is a stabilization of the ego or the separate person, the seeking self. So the person isn't going out so much into seeking and stories and dramas and suffering. It's more in itself. There's more of a centeredness and assertiveness. So that's why often they get talked about together, because often that has to happen. And some teachers talk about stabilizing the ego and awakening simultaneously. And I'm not against that, I'm not criticizing that, but I just like to give a disclaimer to people that this isn't therapy. This is about going beyond the story, not fixing the story. And maybe until there is like a big shift, you won't really understand what I mean. But if you're really having problems, in your story, there's lots of things that you can do to help fix that, or to help relieve the agony of it. And I'm not saying don't do that. So I say this, and I'm just going to full out go with it with non-duality. Over the years, I sometimes found that the message came out a little bit softened because of this awareness how people mix up therapy and non-duality, and a compassion that sometimes it's better to work on the story. But the problem with doing that is that then the pointing to going beyond it gets a bit hidden, and the importance of that, and people begin to get fixated on fixing the story or fixing the ego, whereas really we are going beyond. So if you're suffering from depression, there are things that can be done to help you with that, and there is a possibility that non-duality could. But that's not its point, and that's not what it's made for. And I've seen a lot of times where it's aggravated it and made it worse. I've also seen times when it's switched it. Yes. So, am I depressed, or is this a spiritual awakening? So I just want to say again, I say this so many thousands and thousands of times, but that's what satsang is the repetition and pointing to truth, or the removal of darkness. So there is so many different awakenings. And the awakening that I'm speaking about, I'm speaking about all of them, but the one that I'm really pointing to is the shift from being a centralized person that's experiencing this world to, how do you even say this movement energetically, this movement back to what you truly are, which isn't limited, which isn't separate, which isn't something. In non-duality, that's often spoken about as awareness or consciousness or God or self or the divine or beingness. Sometimes I amness, Krishna, Kali, Brahman, the ultimate nothing and everything. That's become very popular in the West now. Emptiness and form, formlessness, God, divinity. Yeah, we could go on. So often people see that movement which I just spoke of as an intellectual thing, or as something that's understood. But it's actually really energetical. Prior to that shift, it feels like there is something here inside the head. And after that shift, you are not localized, but you're seemingly experiencing through these bodies. But who you are is not localized, and it's energetical. It's a movement to absolute silence and stillness. Nisargadatta Maharaj calls it Sat Chitananda. So when consciousness meets beingness, there is in bliss. And that manifests as blissfulness in the body, but who you truly are is bliss, is love, which is beyond any form or anything. So that's the awakening that I'm speaking about. But there can be different awakenings. There can be Kundalini awakening. There can be the awakening to love, the awakening to emptiness. There can be chakra awakenings. There can be intellectual awakenings. All different types of energy awakenings. Can be expansions of the personal consciousness, expansions of the person, the body-mind, letting go of all different karmas and habits and conditions. The one that I'm speaking about comes with the end of seeking. And what the end of seeking is you're so contented in yourself, you're no longer looking for it outside of you. And this is where, that very statement is where it can get confused with depression. Mostly from the outside, not from the inside. So people might look at somebody that's had this awakening and think it's depression. But from internally, it doesn't feel like depression at all. So I think internally you wouldn't question if it's depression or not. I'm pretty sure of that, but I also know life is infinite possibilities. So if ever I say something for certain, it will always get contradicted because there's nothing which is certain. Nothing. No thing which is certain. So internally, it doesn't feel like depression because you're so contented in yourself, you no longer seek it outside. So you're so contented in yourself, you're so at peace and at home, sitting on the sofa or going for a 10-kilometer run is the same because you're in yourself. The pain, the pleasures change, but when you're in yourself, you're just contented. Talking, not talking, toileting, not toileting. and that is what Nisargadatta describes as Satchitananda, bliss. In bliss, not an experience of bliss, although that can happen. Yourself is bliss. When you're in yourself, it just is bliss, love, peace, home. So in that awakening, there cannot be depression. There can't be depression. The only thing that I can think of is if you're in front of somebody that's depressed, because you no longer have boundaries, then if there's somebody in front of you that's depressed, then in a way you become depressed because that's what's in front of you, but not internally, if there is such a thing. It's not something that would be generated from your character anymore, from that character of that body-mind. Because you're at home. So why it could be mistaken as depression, I think, actually I'll just go back again, because I know that a lot of the popular teaching in non-duality is that you can be free and anything can arise. And I love that, because that strips away all ideas of shame, of comparison, of better than and worse than. Yeah, but I suppose I see depression as a seeking. It's seeking. It's not like a natural feeling. Roger taught me, and that's my experience, that seeking is the end of hatred. And I think that depression is in that, is in a form of hatred. I know that sounds weird, and I'm not certain about that, because like I said, any certainties that I say, life will contradict it. But I think that often, and there's most probably exceptions to this, but often depression is repressed anger, which is hatred. And that repressed anger creates depression. And this is very well documented in Chinese medicine. This isn't something I'm just making up, but it's also my experience. It's something to do with the solar plexus. There is maybe something like clinical depression or something where I don't know so much about that. So I understand that there is like this is a lot more complicated than I'm making it sound, but I'm generalizing. And in general, I think that depression is repressed hate, and it's exhausting, and it takes all your life force energy, and it makes you feel depressed. And it's about you as a person not feeling good enough, shame. It's all in a seeking bundle. Stopping, not listening to God's word. You've listened to the person's word, and you've tried to be lovable on a seeking level, and it drained all your energy and taken all your energy. But I am aware there is more complications there. There is something more, but in general, in the generalization. So when you're in yourself, it's not that you can't have difficult emotions, but they're not seeking emotions. There's no longer seeking happening. Seeking is selfing, is personing. You're no longer trying to be someone, to get something. You're no longer trying to be someone to get God, to please the others, to, feed your ego. You're deeply in yourself. So there can be emotions, but they're emotions that are more just about the moment. So if someone comes and spills a coffee all over your white dress or something, or a glass of red wine because they're drunk, there could be annoyance. Or if your partner is like in front of you, really attracted to someone and can't stop staring at their boobs or something, then maybe there could be a jealousy, or not a jealousy like a possessiveness, but a jealousy like a discomfort in that situation. An awkwardness, not wanting to be there. Those types of things. But depression, I feel like, comes from this suppressed hatred, this suppressed anger, from not listening to God's word, from trying to be someone and repressing yourself. So why it also gets confused in non-duality is because when you are waking up, all your seeking patterns have been about giving you pleasure and trying to avoid pain. And so when that begins to be challenged, then the seeking patterns aren't acted out so much. And then the ego and the person isn't getting its relief from itself. So the pleasure and the getting hits from the outside world was relieving you from yourself, relieving you from pain, relieving you from the discomfort of the body because of the suppression of God's word, like not listening to God's word, but following the ego, following the illusion. So all this repressed stuff from seeking, from years and years of seeking. And so, because you're not getting relief externally anymore, then the pain from the body is coming up. And the deep fear that the person has that life is meaningless begins to come up. And all this energy from the solar plexus, like I feel depression is the solar plexus, where it was like, get, and then it's not getting. And then it begins to fall into hopelessness because it can't get fed anymore. It can't go and flirt with the hot girl or flirt with the hot man or tell this grandeur story or compete to be better with someone and be like, yeah! It's like, that doesn't quite work anymore. So then this energy of the solar plexus begins to emerge, feeling meaningless, feeling pointless, and then there might be a belief in it. And all of it's not true. All of it is illusion. And this is the work of non-duality, even though it's nobody's work really, but it's seeing through the illusion. You have these intense energies, these depressive energies coming up and seeing it's not true, rather than believing, oh, my life is pointless, or this is pointless, or non-duality doesn't work, or this or that, telling all these stories. It's saying this isn't true. Freedom is self. Freedom is in the vertical, not in the horizontal. And depression can feel wretched. I've never really experienced depression, but I've been around people that are depressed, and I can feel the weight of it. It's not true. So it's like having these god-awful feelings, feeling like you can't get out of the bed in the morning, and all the stories that come with it. It's not true. It's not true. It's not true. Home is this moment. This movement away from the vertical, the horizontal story of yourself and what the problem is, back to this. And it's this breaking of the pattern. This isn't true. And who is it doing that? That's the crazy thing. It feels like you. It feels like you are discerning and seeing it's not true. It feels like you are coming back here, but you've never existed, so that's not really true. That is illusion too, the one that's like feeling like it's waking itself up. So you're breaking that illusion of you, and then you come to God more and more, which is this moment, and acting from God, not acting from illusion that comes from time, that is trying to be something, that's trying to be better, that's trying to be smarter, that's trying to be beautifuler, that's trying to be bigger boobs, or whatever the thing is, or more spiritual. It doesn't have any importance. When you begin to taste yourself, when you begin to taste presence, it all begins to lose its importance. You're being sucked down a drain plug. Nothing in the world has importance. It only had importance to you that was trying to find itself in the world, trying to find peace, trying to find freedom, trying to find happiness in the world. And then when you begin to taste freedom, like that loses its juice. That loses its like, what good can that do anymore? It just doesn't give it to you. Nothing gives it to you. It's fleeting, it's gone. You get the hit of pleasure. You get the attention. You talk and talk and talk and make someone listen to you and hear you and understand you. But it just doesn't really have the hit. This is what's important always. And this is what non-duality is. Therapy is fixing the horizontal line story of you. And sometimes that's needed to settle everything down. Sometimes this message is too intense for that seeming horizontal illusion of you. Kind of sends it crazy. So it's settling that down. But it's not like you're going to settle it down and then you're just going to drop into this. It's that you settle it down and it becomes more calm. It has less stories in time, but it's still there. There's still a you there. It's what is beyond the you. Who is looking out of your eyes now? Who is speaking? Who is doing? The story is always saying, me, I'm doing, but that is the lie. There is nobody here doing. There's no one here doing. There is only what is. This beingness, this presence, this empty looking, which is yourself. And it's so free, it's all you've ever dreamed of, it's all you've ever longed for in every extravagant piece of music that you've tried to compose. Every idea, always been looking for self, 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 self. Not the little self, but the big self, in everything. In the mother's love, in the fame, in the fortune, in the house, in the whatever it is that you dream of, community. It's always here as this. Always here as this. In the health of the body. Maybe it's you're just dreaming for the health of the body. That too, isn't it? I'm not saying don't do that, don't look after the body. Broken limb, try and fix it. If you've got exhaustion, try and fix it. But what I'm saying is that freedom is beyond health or no health, otherwise it wouldn't be freedom. What is looking at that person that is unhealthy? What is looking at that person that is suffering? What is experiencing this? Who is experiencing this? Beyond the narration of me, 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 me. This constant voice in your head. Who is looking? Who is experiencing? This is such an amazing journey into self, into freedom, into expansion, into the infinite. The person is in circles. It gets it, it loses it, it gets it, it loses it. What is beyond the person? What is beyond you? What is beyond you? What is beyond you?